1, 2. Hi. We're, we are here with my creation. It's a Topolona modular unit, and he has various sections. He has a first section, which is an FX section. There are one distortion unit, mono input and one output, and compressor unit, input and out. An hybrid section, I call it hybrid because it's based on a patch block, and patch block can be both an FX or a synthesizer. In this case it's a synthesizer. It's polyphonic FM synth with a drum kick with a trigger input on the input channel, and these are the output of the patch block, and these are the two knobs of the patch block. The second section is a MIDI converter, MIDI to gate, 4 gate and 4 pitch converter, and a MIDI out clock. It also has common section for the MIDI muso on the first 3 columns, and it has MIDI clock out, and also these 3 jacks here have a section here for tip and ring and sleeve, so it's possible to get the clock out routed to the TRS section, and you get MIDI clock out. The MIDI input can be both TRS or standard in 5 on the back. I don't know if you can see it. It's back here, and here is the patch block, USB input, the power of the patch block. These are also the guitar jacks, 6.5 millimeter for the 2 effects with LEDs. Okay, the first 2 sections. Now it's the third section is the mixer. The mixer is based on 2 racket mixers, and it has it's split in 2, with the first racket mixer going into the second, so it's possible to use the separated output of the first mixer for a dual compression. You can go into the effects and then go back into the second part of the mixer, and you have a parallel compression. These are the main volume of the 2 mixers, and these are the 8 channels volume with the mutes. Each channel has a stereo input on top that is that are passive sound to the mono input, so they work in pairs. And also it's possible to use the lower input as a direct out from the stereo input. So it's also possible to feed stereo input and process the effects and send it back to another channel. Then we have the third section, or fourth section, sorry, which are 4 monotrons. So it's an original, a duo, and 2 echoes. They all have modifications. Each has its own jack section and also patch bass section. The patch bass section works differently from the main section because here we have the VCC, VBIAS and ribbon keyboard input that has not been broken. So you can still play the monotron with input keyboard or potentiometers or triggers or whatever, and then you have gate and inputs on the first row. You have the filter input, the LFOs, all LFOs, input and outputs on the bottom row. And then we have the logic section, which has divider unit on this 12 central block. Then we have two R2R units on the left hand side and right side of it. The R2R can be used to attenuate gate signal for the monotrons, or can be used to kind of remix some LFOs to some strange waveforms that can be used for experimenting. These are also on the patch bay, and we have 4 more R2R on the patch bay. And then we have a logic section which is only on the patch bay. And so we have a muxer, we have AND or NOT, XNOR or circuit here. We have a hex inverter here, which is not, by the way, and sample and hold, small sample and hold. And now we can open it, and I'll show you. Some modification I done on the racket mixer. So on the racket mixer we have done this modification, and there are, because the racket mixer has an input from 9 volts and -9, the half voltage has been shorted to ground, and where there was the ground input on the op-amps, we've added 9 volts, -9 volts. I don't know if you can see, but it's this yellow cable, and there are 2 rails for the -9 volts. The +9 volts goes into both units, and they share a common ground. And we basically done all the connection on the board, and then we took the output from each summed channels, mono and stereo, and we fed it to the 2 racket mixer with a small Kiner wire. Because we doubled the power, we also had to swap some capacitors up to 25 volts. One for the aux input of this chained racket mix, and also the main outputs, they have been swapped from 16 volt to 25, while all the other capacitor can stay at 16 volts, and it's okay. Under here there are the passive connection. They're all made on the board, and basic passive summing connection. There are 4K7 resistance, then there is a 20K pull down for interference, but just on the stereo sum. There is not a pull down on the stereo to mono sum, because in this way we can use the mono also as direct out. The same stereo to mono sum is done on the output to get a mono output that is just the sum of the left and right channel. We have a start point connection, which is not really a start point, and here we have the power board. So it's input from 12 volts. The 12 volts supply the MIDI muso, and then it's the only one that goes to with 9 volts. Then we have a 9-volt conversion, and the -9 and 5 volts conversion on the bottom, and then we have isolated outputs from positive with decoupling capacitors to the ground to have more stable current. This worked very well with a LED transformer, which has a ground input. So it's important that it has a ground input to minimize noise from the circuit, because otherwise, if it's not ground connected, there can be some problems, because all this pull down needs a proper ground connection. Everything on the patch bay has some kind of cables, and there are small circuits, or also breadboard circuits for the logic parts that don't fit really well, but they're okay, I think, because they work. And so this is the inside, so you can see there are the 4 monotron. There is the FX section, the mixer section, and the patch bay section. And inside we have the FX boards, the patch block boards, the MIDI boards, and the MIDI octocoupler for the patch block, which is connected to MIDI muso. So all instruction and documentation are available on my website, and if you want, you can build one yourself. You can swap the effects with what you want. You can put something else. The very nice stuff about this, it's the mixer section. I'm very proud of it, because essentially it's like quite a professional mixer now, and it's been very cheap to build. And it works very well. I also use this case. I built it with the help of a friend, But in the development section I had some problem with space, so initially it was developed without the case, and I had these four bars that are connected to the bottom, so it was possible to test it without the case, and it was all open. And then just after it I made the case and fit perfectly. If you have any question, please write down below. The pots I know are not very beautiful, so I should shortly add some other pots. If you have any other question about the CMOS logic and what it does, I'm not very good with CMOS logic. This was my first project, so I had to learn everything from scratch, but everything is working fine. So I have the divider which is working, I have the attenuator which are working, and I have all the logic section which is working that can be used for triggers. It only needs can be it could evolve with an envelope section, or because I find that when working with gates and try to command the monotrons, the gate can be a bit too harsh, so even with the MIDI converter. So sometimes I wonder if an envelope applied to the gate wouldn't be better for the monotrons. So I tried to input a gate, and they work very good with with an envelope, and they work very good with an envelope. So now it has no envelope here, so maybe you could add an envelope section, but you had to sacrifice something, or make it bigger, or sacrifice something for the envelope section. So I hope you enjoyed, and we'll follow more videos so you can see how it works, how it can be patched, and other stuff. That's it, and this is the Rackets mixer. I just changed the mute buttons because this could fit better in my case, but everything else is the pots are the original. Then I had Tonkinon jacks for all the inputs, and that's it. Bye.